Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking to you about AlertEnterprise's Guardian Visitor Identity Management solution for visitor identity access governance. With this solution, customers are able to manage visitor access or visitor access governance end to end. And here's a representation of what that might look like. On the left-hand side, what you're seeing is the ability to register or pre-register visitors in various different ways, whether it's through the built-in self-service portal from the Alert Enterprise platform, whether you integrate with other services like ServiceNow, or your business applications like Outlook or 365, as well as API integration. We also have a lobby experience for both the lobby ambassador as well as a visitor. You can have a lobby ambassador have a workstation where they can help check in the visitor and complete the check-in process and issue the credentials. And or you can also leverage the self-service capabilities within the platform and utilize self-service kiosks for the visitors to be able to manage the check-in process. Regardless of where the event starts or how it is invoked, it all feeds into the Guardian platform, which is where our core components reside, which are the workflow engine, the rules engine, the policy engine, the AI engine, the recommendation engine, the notifications engine, and many more things. And this allows you to be able to do approval-based workflows, vet against any of your vetting systems, be able to present questionnaires and capture information about attestations, consents, health screenings, or any policy enforcements, whether it's background check, licensing, training, certification, and other scenarios as well. Given we are a web-based application and support role-based access control, there are various roles out of the box within the system. And of course, one of them is the admin role, which allows you to be able to manage the environment and do the configuration and maintenance as needed through elevated privileges through the admin portal. Once the workflow approvals are done, once the vetting has been completed and a visitor is ready to move forward, then we can perform some of the tasks that are represented in this column here. If you are enabling employee temporary badge scenario, what that means is if an employee has forgotten or misplaced their badge and they need to obtain a badge for the day, they can easily do so in the lobby after they've arrived. They can either engage with a lobby ambassador or they can perform that function on the self-service kiosk and be able to get employee temporary credentials that will match or mirror their normal credentials. We can, of course, issue visitor badges or visitor credentials. Those could be in the form of physical badges like technology badges, PVC cards, stickers. They could be mobile credentials. They could be other wearables, whether they're Bluetooth or NFC devices. So all of those or a combination of those could be issued to the visitor and they can be managed, their access levels can be managed on those. We can also integrate with various guest Wi-Fi systems like Cisco ISE and Aruba to provide guests access for the period that they're going to be there, as well as integration with physical access for parking facilities. So that way you can seamlessly have a visitor get access to the parking facilities as well as the rest of your areas for their visit. The way we do all that is through our integration framework and be able to integrate with various systems downstream. So whether that be your physical access control system for the lobby for a particular building or globally or your parking facilities, we have an extensive connector framework with tons of connectors out of the box ready to go. And that's how we can leverage that integration framework to be able to provision and deprovision access downstream based on the requirements of the visit itself. With our role-based access control, there's several personas and actors that are built within the system. There's several profiles you can leverage. Here you see a small set of out-of-the-box personas. You can extend those. You can modify the level of access that they have and the permissions within those, as well as create new roles if you wanted. So a host role would be somebody who can pre-register the visitor or send an invite for the visitor to complete the registration, be able to review their history of visitors, be able to invite visitors that they have previously invited and so forth. And as you can imagine, the different roles allow different functionalities. And given that role-based access control capability, you can granularly define the permissions for every UI element, every widget, so that way you can tailor and craft the type of interface that you want to create for them by clicking checkboxes and enabling and disabling visual elements to be able to define to be able to determine what will be visible for a specific role. So looking at the host or receptionist persona, there are various use cases that are ready to go out of the box. I alluded to some of them where I said guest pre-registration. So pre-registration can be done through the web portal, a mobile device, Outlook integration, some of those things that I showed in the previous slides. We also support single registration or group registrations also. In group registrations, you can have a small set of group or a very large number of people who are going to be registered. And we have the ability to do bulk upload through CSV templates as well. The host can also manage or change their visitors as well as their visits. So if you have invited a visitor and their registration is in process, you can make a modification to that. If their registration has been completed and approved, you can still make a modification to that as needed. I mentioned the ability to bulk upload through CSV template. We provide the ability in the interface to be able to download a template as well as populate it and fill it. And there's no upper limit on how many numbers of users you can have. You can have 100, 1,000, 10,000, 50,000, as many as you want, and the system will parse them and accordingly process them to be able to go through the visitor pre-registration process, whatever your workflow might be for a specific type of user or category of user, we would be able to traverse through the workflow accordingly. And since we have a robust notification engine, we can manage the communications through email notifications for visitors, for host, for the security personnel, for the lobby personnel, or whomever is a role in the system. So you can receive notifications when a host sends an email invite for a visitor to register, pre-register, or when a host is pre-registered and their registration is complete, whether we need to email them a QR code, facility information. When they check in, we can fire off a notification to your host and other personnel that your visitor has checked in. We can also send an email notification to the visitor themselves and say, hey, thank you for checking in. Please proceed to X, Y, and Z elevator bay or X, Y, and Z floor, whatever your instructions might be. If a visitor has overstayed, we have the ability to notify them of that, as well as when they've checked out, we can send notifications for that activity as well. So let's take a little bit of closer look at that pre-registration workflow and how it works behind the scenes. So when a host initially registers a guest or invites a guest to register for a visit, and once that registration request is submitted, a workflow is kicked off. And based on the site, based on the visitor type, there are going to be some rules that the workflow is going to follow. And here's where you can easily, within the workflow engine and the workflow tool, using drag and drop, you can determine, hey, what are our requirements here? Are we checking against a do not admit list or a watch list, or are we doing any vetting? As we go through the approval workflow, we'll determine, based on your business process, how many stages of approval are there and what happens at what stage, whether you're going to do any vetting, whether you're going to do any training checks, whether you're going to capture any, whether you have any information that you need to send the approver. Maybe they don't have the right training for this request, so the request could be on pause while they're notified and obtain that training. Once all the approvals are completed, we can fire off an email based on our notification engine where the visitor will get all the information they need to be able to come in for that visit. They can get facility information, parking information, they can get security and safety procedures, any links, any videos, any other material you want to send them, including a QR code, so that way they can come in and have that frictionless user experience during the check-in process. Of course, if any of these things, if there's a hiccup, we can also route to a security administrator to look into it a little bit more. Maybe there's some person whose name matches on a watch list, but you have the ability to do a secondary check. Maybe it's a false positive. Maybe their name matches somebody else's, and those things can be cleared up with the security approvers. Ultimately, if some of these prerequisites aren't met or a security approver deems necessary that this cannot continue, then the request would be rejected and a visit would be canceled and the appropriate notifications would be sent. If the request is approved, of course, we would send notifications to the host as well as the visitor or anybody else that would be part of that process. Looking at the host self-service portal capabilities, I mentioned they can pre-register users, they can register them themselves, or they can send out an invite. They can view visitors that are pending approval or visitors that are approved and pending arrival. They can view their history of visitors. There are several other things, an admin function that are available here. And since we are a web-based application built on open standards, we're fully mobile responsive. So you can perform these functions from any device form factor, whether it's a desktop, laptop, tablet, mobile browser. We are agnostic to the device form factor. I also mentioned we have the ability to integrate with your business applications such as O365 and Outlook desktop client. So it's a very seamless integration. So instead of initiating the visitor registration request through a web portal, you can easily perform that function from your existing business applications. Let's say Outlook 365 in this case, the calendar. I can go in here, I can start inviting people for my meeting, and the system is intelligent enough to understand based on rules that, hey, you're inviting people that are within your domain, but their physical location is not at where the meeting is, or these people are not part of the organization. Their email shows an external domain. So then you can easily do the visitor registration from within Outlook. As you can see on the right-hand side, that's the integration of the visitor identity management plugin for Outlook from AlertEnterprise. And it picks up who are your visitors that need to be registered. You have the option to select and deselect the checkboxes. You can expand them and provide additional detail. If you're doing multiple users, you can even include a group name. And once you press the create visit request through API integration, this will be pushed to the AlertEnterprise Guardian Visitor Identity Management solution. And that workflow will kick off that we saw a moment ago. And the same process will follow. It'll go through the workflow, it'll go through the approval process, and ultimately, if it's approved, they'll be parked in the visitor lobby dashboard for check-in when they arrive. Now let's look at some of the check-in use cases. So whether it's a pre-registered guest that already has a QR code, or you have a walk-in guest that has never registered before, or they've registered in the past and they're a returning visitor, we can handle all of those scenarios. So some of the things you see on the right-hand side, these are out-of-the-box use cases that if you approach a lobby ambassador, they can work with a walk-in visitor, they can work with an existing pre-registered visitor. You can show a QR code, scan an ID, provide the email address, provide your host info. There are various different ways for the lobby ambassador to look them up and be able to process their check-in. If the visitor is a walk-in, they can fill out the form. The lobby ambassador can fill out the form for them. And then ultimately, once the registration is complete or the check-in is complete, you can issue credentials in various forms or issue a sticker, and then we can send off those notifications. Now, interestingly, all of that was with somebody that is attending the lobby, such as a lobby ambassador or one of your security personnel or some receptionist. We also have, for various reasons, customers choose to also include the self-service kiosks. It could be because you have a very high volume lobby and you want the option for both interaction with someone in the lobby or being able to do it self-sufficiently through a self-service portal. In other cases, you could have a very remote facility, depending on the industry, depending on the type of location. You may have a very remote site where it is unmanned and you can only check in through the self-service kiosk. So those are options as well. So a lot of flexibility within the platform. But from the self-service kiosk, the experience is somewhat similar. A visitor can scan their QR code, scan their ID, do a facial recognition scan. If they've been here before, the system will pick that up and say, oh, I see you're pre-registered. Would you like to proceed with your check-in? If the visitor is not created, if they have not been in the system previously, then we will give them the ability to register. So in this case, if it's a walk-in visitor, they can still go to the self-service kiosk and initiate that process. We can have them consent to any conditions that are part of their visit, any terms and conditions, any consent forms. We can have them sign an NDA, capture their digital signature, take a picture. And by the way, we can do all of that from the lobby ambassador perspective too, right? With any external peripherals. You may have a signature pad, you may have an externally connected camera, so that way you can capture their photo. And ultimately, in both scenarios, you can, again, issue them credentials, whether they're printed stickers, whether they're technology badges, mobile credentials, and so forth. And of course, leverage our robust notification engine to be able to fire off those notifications. Another scenario is where you have a virtual kiosk, meaning there's no kiosk hardware in your lobby. You can have a QR code and you can have visitors leverage their mobile devices to be able to check in or complete the registration, or they'll complete the walk-in registration and check in. So a visitor would arrive in the lobby. There would be a QR code visible in the lobby that would signify that this is a check-in QR code or registration QR code for that specific lobby. Once you scan that QR code, a visitor's mobile device will be routed to the appropriate URL for the registration form or the check-in form, and then the same process would follow where they could complete an application for registration, or if they're a pre-registered visitor, they can complete the check-in process and be issued their credentials, and the notifications can be sent. So as you can see, a lot of different options depending on what the customer's requirements are, depending on what their needs are, depending on what type of facility it is, how remote or how populated or how high the volume is. So a lot of different options out of the box. So while we talked about the check-in experience or the check-in use cases as an overview, let's see what really happens behind the scenes from a workflow perspective. So whether you're checking in with the lobby personnel, whether you're checking in with your phone or you're checking in from a kiosk, all of that will kick off your check-in workflow. And your check-in workflow will again review your vetting systems, your training. So maybe something has changed between the time you registered and the time you arrived. Maybe your training expired. Previously it was valid and maybe now it's expired. Or more likely, maybe something has changed in a watch list or do not admit list. So we can catch that on the fly and make sure that we prevent that security exposure for your organization. So if there's any possible policy violations or vetting system rejections, then you'll be immediately rejected, or you can be routed to additional screening or further review to a security approver that can take the appropriate necessary actions. If you are approved, then of course we would issue that badge like we mentioned, or the credential. And leveraging the notification engine, as you can see, a host would receive an email notification, a visitor can receive a notification as well. And then if we're issuing credentials that are integrating with your physical access control system, whether they're turnstiles or readers or QR code readers or PIN pads or mobile credentials or whatever those might be, we can provision those downstream physical access control system or control systems, including parking facilities and whatever you might have. So that way it's seamless. Not only does the visitor get a credential, but they instantly have the ability to use it. There's no significant delay. This happens within 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, where we are real-time provisioning those downstream systems. So that way that frictionless experience continues to be supreme. Here's a quick view of the visitor lobby dashboard, where a lobby ambassador can have a full view of their facility or any facilities that they're managing, any lobbies that they're managing. They can see at a glance all the registrations, how many people are expected, how many are checked in, checked out, how many are pending, who has overstayed their visit, and you see the yellow bars, yellow highlights that represent that this person has stayed past their allotted visit time. The system is intelligent enough to be able to take action automatically. If somebody stayed past their visit time, you can configure the system to notify the host as well as the visitor that, hey, you've stayed past your visit time. If you want, you can also give them the ability in that notification to click a link and extend that visit. Maybe the host wants to extend the visit by 30 minutes, so that way they can take that action by simply clicking on the link in that notification. We can also have scenarios where if you wanted to notify somebody a few minutes before their meeting end time, we can do that as well. This is how the lobby ambassador would be able to look up a visitor or look up a group of visitors, check them in, issue their badges, issue any mobile credentials, be able to use the different templates. You may have different badge templates or badge designs for a different category of visitors. Maybe your visitors get a green badge with a V on it, but your contractors get a blue badge with a C on it, and maybe your service personnel or janitorial staff or an HVAC service personnel, those would be different categories of visitors. So you can really tailor this even visually to be able to issue different types of credentials. So it's abundantly clear what category of visitor they are. And then your service and security and personnel can take the appropriate action as needed. Of course, we can look up the user, we can scan their QR code, we can do the facial recognition, all of those things that I mentioned, but everything happens through a single interface. You don't have to fumble, you don't have to jump around systems, you don't have to worry about, what kind of badge do I need to issue? What kind of template do I need to issue? All those rules can be built into the system, and we can enforce those rules and policies so that way the validity dates for a specific location are followed. You don't accidentally put in validity dates for too long of a period. Based on the registration, if somebody's requesting a 4-hour visit, then that's what will be enforced. If somebody's requesting a longer visit, but the facility only requires no more than a 1-day visit at a time, then those rules would be enforced. So a lot of different options, and everything is configurable through the system, through that admin portal that I mentioned earlier, through a browser UI. There's no programming. We're a code-free platform. If you know how to use a browser and you have domain knowledge, there's a very small learning curve to figure this out. So here's a quick slide to show how we are also be able to integrate with parking facilities. So imagine you have somebody coming in, they haven't completed their registration yet, right? Or they haven't completed their check-in yet. So we can't give them too much access, but if they're coming in at the entry point, they can use that QR code to get access to the parking facility, because that record is in the system and we can provision that physical access control system, and that QR code on their mobile device would suffice for them to access the parking. And then, of course, based on any notifications in email, they would be routed to the lobby where they would complete their check-in process. So extremely seamless, extremely intuitive, again, living up to that promise of frictionless access for visitors. So we have customers in various industries. We also work in a lot of heavily regulated industries like energy and utilities, oil and gas, healthcare, financial, things like that. So depending on the sensitivity or the sensitive nature of the facility or the access, you can also leverage visitor identity management to be able to do that additional screening, have that extra scrutiny in being able to complete the visitor check-in process. So you have different scenarios, right? Before the visitor even is invited, as a host prepares a registration or pre-registration, you can have multiple layers of approvals, vetting, checking against other systems like LMS and things like that. And on the day of the visit, what we can do is, instead of a visitor just coming in and scanning their QR code with their lobby ambassador or a self-service kiosk, we can have that additional layer of security where if your facility is a data center or if it's a NERC type of facility where escort scenarios are required, then we could enforce those by notifying the host that, hey, you have a visitor. Here's an additional approval code that we can text to the host. And then the host could come in and either enter that code in the kiosk or in the lobby with the lobby ambassador, or they can swipe their badge to confirm that secondary factor that, yep, I am here, I'm present, I'm ready to collect. I certify that I'm going to be the escort and that I will be escorting this person throughout the facility or whatever your process might be. And then we also support scenarios where you can limit the number of visitors per host or per escort, or if a host or escort wants to hand off to a different host or escort, perhaps their shift is over and they need to leave. So we have all of those options as well. And of course, any of the badge printing or credential issuing scenarios, those don't change. Those are all available regardless of this additional scrutiny, whether it's at a data center, a more sensitive facility, like I mentioned, an NERC or nuclear power plant or things like that. So we spoke about role-based access control. Let's talk a little bit about some additional features based on those roles. So if you're a front desk personnel, you can do several different things. You can run reports of visitor tracking if you're issuing technology badges. So every swipe that has been registered, we can pull that in a report and we can tell you where the visitor went. If you see visitors trying to access areas that they're not supposed to, we can generate notifications based on that. It may be a case a visitor is lost or they're fishing for access. Of course, I mentioned employee temp badge scenario, the check-in process. A couple other things we can do are emergency notification. So we can integrate with your mass notification systems like Everbridge and others to be able to leverage those to notify all the visitors that are currently checked into the facility or any visitors that are en route, or any type of emergency notification messaging that you want to do based on the system's awareness of the occupancy based on visitors currently available in the system or in the facility. We also have the ability to do a lot of different reports. We have a reports engine that gives you a lot of canned reports out of the box, and then you can also extend that further to do ad hoc or customized reports if you need it. From a security admin perspective, with a user that would have elevated privileges, we can open up a lot of other functionality. So if you want to issue contractor badges and you want to print those badges or issue those, that's a different category of visitors, right? Instead of your standard guests or speakers or law enforcement officers or whatever that might be. You can have short-term projects, long-term projects. So your security admin can manage that contractor badge issuance process. They can leverage the badge designer and create different badge templates, as I mentioned earlier. They can do watch list management, NDA management, email template management. They can also pull reports that would be beyond what a front desk personnel could do. Maybe audit reports, maybe a report across all your global facilities. You can permission control those reports and determine which role would have access to. In addition to that, we can also automate reports on a periodic basis or an event basis. So a lot of different audit and compliance capabilities from our reporting engine as well. And it would be tailored to the specific role, and you would determine which role would have permission to what elements within the system. And speaking of contractors, we would be able to do a lot of those functions that we do for visitors, but for contractors, right? So you can issue them badges ahead of time. If you have a bunch of contractors coming in, you can do bulk processing of those badges. You can go into the approval inbox, and once that request is submitted, somebody can approve and say, hey, we want to onboard a contractor visit request. We can capture their photos, we can do their training checks, prerequisite checks, and issue those badges just like we do for any category of visitors. So let me also show you a little bit about the self-service kiosk. So very simple, clean, streamlined interface, extremely intuitive. When you arrive at a facility, you can brand this the way you want based on your customer messaging, based on your messaging, your logo, your colors, things like that. Very simple options. Hey, you're approaching the self-service kiosk, scan your ID, or do a facial scan recognition, scan your QR code, or use your email. If you're a pre-registered visitor, it'll immediately pull your record up and allow you to complete the process. If you are a walk-in visitor, then it'll bring up a form and say, hey, please fill this out. Now, if you're a returning visitor and you're doing walk-in, it'll also pre-populate the form with a lot of your information that is in the system, maybe your first name, your last name, your phone number, your email address, and so forth. So it's all a matter of how you want to configure the system and what automation you want to perform, but it's very easy and extremely intuitive. And as you can see, you can approach it. It's pretty self-explanatory of what needs to be done. No instructions needed. We work with a lot of different hardware manufacturers for kiosks and kiosk cabinets. And of course, from a hardware perspective, we support multiple devices, multiple types of devices and multiple OSs. We support Apple's iOS tablets, so iPads, as well as any Windows Surface tablets. So you have various options of being able to use the embedded cameras, attaching peripherals for printing stickers, being able to use other scanning solutions to see if there's a need for scanning if somebody has a mask on or not, things like that. One of the other things we can do is when we present visitors any of their consent forms or terms and conditions, we can also include any health screening scenarios. If you have any questions or concerns about their health, they can attest to their health. They can attest to whether or not they have been exposed to any type of health risk that could impact the rest of the population within your facilities. So it's a holistic solution. You can turn on and turn off any of the features that you want, but you can certainly provide a lot of capabilities to your personnel and your visitors based on what options you want to leverage within the platform. I mentioned to you about mobile credentials. You know, this is a new cool thing to do with the ability to access the secure elements within these mobile devices now across multiple mobile platform providers. You can easily issue mobile credentials now. So if you're offering your contractors or your visitors technology badges that integrate with your physical access control system, you can leverage our mobile credential capabilities, and it's very easy. You can download an app, the mobile credential will become available, and you can easily add it to your NFC wallet, and then the visitor or the contractor can just tap that like a prox card on any of the readers. We can integrate with wearables as well, if that is something that is a requirement. Let's talk a little bit more about the administration capabilities in visitor identity management. I've touched on a few of these. We talked about a badge template designer. We have the ability to do, you know, when you take a picture, you can do picture editing, you can crop, resize, and things like that. We also have an asset management tool where we will add all your badges that you want to issue or any of your credentials that you want to issue. and then only utilize those when a lobby ambassador issues a badge or when the kiosk dispenses a badge. So that way you know that you're only issuing a badge with a serial number that is part of your asset list. You don't have to worry about somebody has duplicated a badge or trying to bring in some other badge and try to gain access by using a badge that is not part of your asset pool. So that's another layer of security where we can enforce only issuing badges that are on an approved asset list. And also bulk badge issuance. We can send, if you're hosting a large group or if you have a bunch of contractors that are coming in, you can bulk prepare those badges. You can send them to a printing press. And of course, if you're doing mobile credentials or wearables, you can do those in bulk as well. I mentioned to you earlier about a robust notification engine. It has significant capabilities, right? So it supports rich text format, it supports HTML. You can send images, videos, attachments, QR codes. You can send facility information, guest Wi-Fi information, security and safety procedures, any forms that they need to fill out or consent forms that they need to read, any prerequisites. They might need to watch a video so that way they're compliant based on the type of industry you're in. So all of that is possible, again, through the same platform without having to go fumble around with multiple systems, multiple platforms. Same for the badge designer tool. I mentioned to you, it's a drag and drop badge designer tool. It supports dynamic variables. So you can put in here and say, hey, here's how I want to lay it out. Here's my format. Here's going to be my title, here's going to be my text that's going to be on this. For example, company name, host name, location, or visitor type, or the type of visitor category. And then you can easily build these out. And then based on the rules you define, these would be the ones that would be enforced. So you can say, hey, a contractor badge for all contractors at this facility needs to be blue, but a contractor badge at another facility needs to be orange. Visitors get this type of badge, so it's a different template if you're doing those physical access badges. Or if you're doing any stickers that you're printing, you can build these templates for those too, and you can put them on stickers that are self-expiring stickers or the color changing stickers, things like that. So again, this is all built in out of the box. That's part of the visitor identity management suite of solutions here. I briefly hinted that you can do branding and customization. So as you can imagine, being able to put in your company logo, being able to have some of your bookmark icon images, things like that, how you're going to do your branding for the kiosk, how you're going to do your branding for the registration form. You can modify the branding for your check-in with the lobby ambassador, things like that. Given that we're all about compliance and automation and governance, you can imagine extensive reports and dashboard capabilities within the system. So we have a ton of reports and dashboards that are ready to go out of the box, again, based on the type of person that's logging in, based on their role, based on their persona. They could have access to different reports, and you can configure the reports based on different permissions, different scheduling reports. You can schedule reports periodic basis. You can schedule reports based on events. For example, if too many people are overstaying and they cross a certain threshold over a week in a facility, you can say, hey, you know what? We need to send out a report, and then we'll utilize that to retrain some of the personnel and improve our process. Or you can do periodic that, hey, every morning I need a report of how many visitors I'm expecting, or every month I need to know how many visitors we processed, how many visitors registered and didn't show up. And then you can take that and look in the future and start building trends. So if you have a large event coming up and based on historic trends, you can see what type of capacity planning you need to do. So again, all of this is ready to go out of the box, built into the system. And you can also leverage a lot of these reporting capabilities or getting data out of the system through AI and natural language processing. So you can just have a natural conversation and say, hey, show me all the visitors that are registered for this facility today, or show me how many people overstayed last week at this facility. You can imagine the various scenarios that may be available. So it supports voice, and you can tell it to give you a specifically filtered, granular report for a specific set of criteria. Very easy to use and extremely intuitive. So that wraps up our overview of AlertEnterprise's visitor identity management solution. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you more and see how this fits within your access governance requirements. Thank you.